Welcome to A Place for Film, the IU Cinema podcast. On this week's episode, we're talking to student filmmaker Russell McGee. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Andy Hunsucker.
And I'm Jason Thompson.
And on this week's episode, as I just mentioned, we are talking to student filmmaker Russell McGee. Russell, you just won Best Narrative Film at the Iris Film Festival, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I've been seeing your stuff for the last couple semesters now, and I found a lot of it really interesting, so I figured we haven't had a student on in a while, Jason. And last year we had the Best Narrative Feature on from Iris on, so maybe we'll make this a tradition. We'll just keep the Iris love going. Yeah. It'll be a nice. It'll be better than winning the Iris, getting to be on our show.
No comment.
So let's talk about the student film work here, and we'll talk specifically about your work, Russell, here in a second. But I do want to talk a little bit about the stuff I saw at the Iris because I missed. Usually, there's student film work every semester, Jason, and I missed almost all of it in May. It just didn't work out for me to go see it. So I've sort of had a lack of that since last year, basically. So I do want to bring up a couple of things here. So the Iris is a local film festival. A lot of it's student work, but local filmmakers can get involved as well. The films are short, like under 7 minutes. Although they did have a couple of films that were longer, or at least one film that was about 15 minutes long, and they cut it into 2. So I don't know if that was like an exhibition, if it was up for awards. I don't know.
Did it play okay as 2 separate things?
Well, I saw it at the student film event back in December, and it worked okay. It did have a nice cut point. I mean, it's sort of like an experimental film a little bit. It's like someone's reading a poem and you're seeing images on screen. So
Oli, who's actually did that film, has been editing it down even further to a 9-minute piece that's going to be in double exposure.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. Cool. And double exposure, which I'm hoping we'll have someone on to talk about, is the student film with live musical accompaniment written at the university. That's the advantage of being at one of the pretty much number one music school in the country.
Soon film school, hopefully.
Yeah, who knows?
Fingers crossed.
Who knows? But there were a couple of these that I wanted to point out. So one of these that I found really interesting was The Devil Woman, and that won another award. I can't remember what award it won.
It won the Brian Friedman Award?
Oh, okay.
The student award.
Okay. That one was really interesting. It was a silent film, and it was basically like it was shot in this little chapel over next to the Union. You go inside of it and it's sort of nice, but on the outside it looks sort of creepy.
Right.
And there's
next to the cemetery.
There's a cemetery right there. So it was shot all in there, and it's just about this guy that's being chased by this devil woman, and she has big long teeth. It was interesting. It was good. I liked it. There was one called Voice Tales, which was hilarious. This person is a comic genius. The girl's name is Nikki Pinney. And I should say the Devil Woman, Colin Robert Denhart. I haven't met him.
He's a good guy.
He's a good guy?
Yeah.
I haven't met Nikki Pinney either, but all it was a voicemail message over like just a weird kind of short video. Is like 2 voicemail messages back to back, like her mom wishing her happy birthday and her like blowing out a candle by herself on a cupcake or something. Oh, it was so funny. I loved that one. I almost voted for that one for my audience award. There was one called Vulpes Culpas, which was kind of weird and interesting by a guy named Brandon Walsh. Basically a dude in a fox mask. And he's just trying to fit in. So he'll like go around and try to bro out and like try to fit in with college students, but he's wearing a fox mask. Is it a real fox? I don't know. But he starts out in the forest. He ends in the forest. I don't know. It's interesting.
And
regardless.
with somebody who's wearing a fox sweater.
Oh, it was. That's right. Yeah. Those little details. Son of the director of the IU Cinema, Max Vickers, son of John Vickers, director of the cinema, had a couple of longboarding videos, which were really good.
Yeah. He's been doing that forever.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like you see him running around doing stuff.
And so it's not like skateboarding. It's not like trick skateboarding. It's almost like a speed sort of
longboards,
thing.
more flexible. You get a little bit more speed with it. I would say they're more difficult to ride.
Yeah. But there was some stuff of him like doing like downhill sort of curves, and some stuff of him like just riding down like a road, and just really kind of interesting stuff. There's one called Meeting Ends that I saw also by a guy named Carter Ross that I thought was pretty good. It had some aspects that I liked. I mean, a lot of times with student film, you're sort of like trying to find the little gem of quality in a lot of stuff, and that's and then I have two here that I want to sort of talk about as two sides of the same coin. The thing I like to see in student film a lot is when somebody has kind of figured out what they're trying to do. When they've sort of found their voice, because when you start out, a lot of these films, you're sort of like, okay, he's sort of trying to do the thing. He's like, okay, I want to make a horror movie, or she wants to make a horror movie. And it's like, so they're trying to do a horror movie, and they've sort of watched horror movies, and they're trying to make that work that way. And you can always sort of tell when that happens. But when they find their voice, then it can sometimes be really special. And that's what I thought Cyrus was. Cyrus, I thought, was a really special film. The people listed here are Mark Totti, Ali Goldstick, and Eric East. And that one was really good. Sahar, my friend Sahar, who you work with quite a bit, she said something to me about Pygmalion, which I wasn't familiar with that story, but that was basically what was happening here. It was a guy who was sort of drawing this woman, this nude model, and she kept disappearing and coming back, and he's sort of slowly going insane. But it was just really well done, and you could tell he knew what he wanted to put on screen.
I think you nailed it, because actually Mark showed this when Werner Herzog was here, and he even commented on the fact that Mark had a very strong cinematic language as far as what he was doing with this story.
Exactly, yeah, and that's what I was really impressed. Now, the other side of the coin, there was another one called The Graveyard Shift, directed by a guy named John Coram. I've actually met him elsewhere. His movie was actually pretty good, but he just hasn't quite found his thing yet. But it's like, John Coram, I'm going to be paying attention. I want to see what he does next, okay? So he wasn't quite there this time, but he's going to – I think he's going to do something really good here in a little while. There were a lot of films here. Some of them I feel like I should remember more about them, but I just don't. Were there any here that you particularly liked, Russell?
I can't remember the name of it specifically, but the piece that was more of a art piece and a statement on actually how we as consumers are, as far as, and it had the different pieces graphically eating.
I think it was Law of the Jungle.
Right.
Catherine Chi, and it was sort of like, you're sort of like seeing almost like waves of products go by, and then like these monsters made out of like a hamburger and a pizza like came up and like chomped on other things, and that was really interesting actually. I did like that one a lot. But yeah, so Russell, you had two films in here. One of them won Best Narrative. The other one is the one I really like of yours, though.
I actually tend to agree with you.
Okay. So the two films that you had were Grief Stricken and Funeral March of a Marionette. You had another one that you sent us that I saw at the last student film event called
The Red Room.
The Red Room, which I thought was pretty good as well. So let's talk first about you a little bit.
Okay.
So how are you getting involved in film at IU? Where did you come from?
Well, I've actually been here in the community for quite some time now, since 2002, actually. I had been at Indiana State prior to that and learned how to direct and act there. And then I've been working in the community in theater since that time. I, at one point, was the literary manager at the Bloomington Playwrights Project. And frankly, it got to the point, though, because of the economy after everything, that I just needed to move on, because there really wasn't a lot of money that I could generate in that field anymore. The thing that kind of hit it home for me was I did a production of the Rocky Horror Show, and I ended up losing $3,000 on that.
Wow.
So, yeah, and it was like 2 years prior, they'd just done that same production at the Waldron. It was a live stage show, and they had people packed out around the block, and we were having a hard time getting students to even come out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So you come from a playwriting background. I mean, have you written? Is that where your interest was in writing plays, and you sort of moved that into film?
Playwriting and directing specifically, and yeah, I have even had like an excerpt performed at the Yates summer school in Ireland that I actually got a full ride to go there to do that, and won a few awards here and there as far as even at the BPP and Indiana Theater Association. So, keeping busy.
Yeah. So you were also in, if I remember correctly, you were in the 3D class.
Correct.
Last semester. So what was... So are you going to school for filmmaking now, or
yes,
are you?
I am.
Okay,
I am. As I said, I'm trying to transition from doing theater to go into television and film at this point, because I'm hoping I'll be able to make a little more money doing that as opposed to in theater.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think of 3D filmmaking? I don't remember what was your project, because I saw them last semester. I don't remember what.
It was called The Clockwork Man, and it had more of a theatrical feel to it, and had that German expressionist design that I had. Actually, Suzanne Schwib's friend Roy Sillings designed the set for that.
Okay.
So the thing that I was trying to mainly play with there was just with my background as far as staging as a director, I knew about depth cues as far as on stage, and I was trying to create that and use that and explore that still safely with what I was comfortable, but try and do a few things that necessarily some of the other students might not have known how to do. And I was even able, and I was just talking to Sean Connolly about this, do a hit to the depth and actually do some key framing where it moved as one of the actors was coming towards the screen into the negative space. So it was fun.
Cool. Well, let's talk about these films that we've got that we got right in front of us here. Funeral March of a Marionette. We'll start with the one that won. Describe the plot of this briefly, and then where the idea came from.
Okay. The plot in a nutshell is you have this funeral director who is basically tired of his job, his life, and you get this visually through just his environment, where he's at and what he's doing, as far as he's just eating this cold soup. And then he gets this idea to draw this little doodle on a sketch pad, and doesn't really think much of it past that, and goes to bed. But while he's asleep, some papers that he put over the doodle end up blowing off, and the doodle comes to life. And I actually played around with the color in black and white, showing the black and white bleak of his life, and then color for the life of the animation itself, and to show the contrast there. But then the point being that he himself couldn't actually interact with this, so he gets frustrated and ends up tearing up the illustration.
Okay. So this had like some stop motion animation in it. How did you do that in that thing? Because it's all live action, and then it sort of focuses on this, and then you've got a stop motion thing. So were you interested in playing with stop motion, or was that something that you had a collaborator on, or how did that work?
I was interested in stop motion. Hadn't ever done it before. I had played around with doing some pencil tests and actually doing some traditional animation before prior to this. So what I was able to do to actually streamline things was I shot some footage of myself acting out some of the scenes, and then I took keyframes from that, and then we knew exactly what to shoot as far as to make the movements work functionally.
Yeah. Were you using the same camera for both? And did you use a live action camera and then a camera for the stop motion, or was it
We
all
used
the same?
a Bolex reflex for both. It was just two different stocks of film.
Yeah.
Color and black and white.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk about, I got to get to Grief Stricken. We should have started with this because I'm just drawn to it. I love the way this one starts out. I love it because it's like an old Twilight Zone episode. And I'll describe this one because I remember it very clearly. This guy wakes up, gets out of bed, goes to get the newspaper. And by the way, these are both silent films.
Correct.
So grief-stricken, he wakes up, he gets out of bed, he gets the paper, and his obituary's on the front page. And so now he's going around town trying to find out what has happened. He goes to the newspaper office, and there was a great shot in there where, and I think it was over at the auditorium here.
It was.
Where,
IU Auditorium.
Yeah, there's a ticket office, and somebody like got up on the stairs and sort of shot down. The lighting in that was really exceptional. Just that one shot is just kind of burned into my mind. And then he gets, a little bit further and goes to his own funeral, and then the people are there, and it's sort of a joke at his expense. I didn't like that part of it. I kind of wanted to keep going. I wanted to see this for like half an hour and then see where it went. But talk to me about Grief-Stricken.
Well, devil in the details. If you were able to actually go back and look at it on the newspapers themselves, I actually did have the date April 1st on there on each of the newspapers. So the joke was there all along as a visual reference, but so they were pulling this elaborate April Fool's joke on him.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously I have influences from Hitchcock and Twilight Zone. So I definitely wanted to be able to play with something thematically where you think that it's going to be one thing and then it has this turn on its head at the end, like a Twilight Zone episode that you're not expecting.
Yeah. So talk to me about who else you work with. I know I first sort of started hearing about you from my friend Sahar, who you work with quite a bit, but who are like your collaborators? Who are the people you like to work with?
I've even worked with Chris Eller, and I've worked with him prior to even coming back to school. We did a small feature called The Babbling Banshee, actually back in 2009, but that's still in post. We won't talk about that. Because there's actually a 10-minute animated section, and frankly, that's part of the reason I was playing around with the stop motion to see if that would be a viable way to actually go ahead and do it. And we ended up, the stop motion that we shot for Funeral March ended up only taking 3 hours for that minute of footage. So I'm thinking that, that might be a way to go.
Yeah. And you had all the drawings pre-done.
Right. And actually with that, because you were asking, is to keep it simple, instead of actually drawing out every movement, what I did was I drew out a figure and then cut out the different pieces as far as the arms and legs at the different joints, and more like a Rankin and Bass animation did it in that style and just created a couple different heads so that the animation could move smoothly.
Yeah. Very cool. So I asked this question of every student filmmaker because they all seem to sort of come at this thinking, I'm going to do one thing, and then they discover something else. What are you finding most interesting about filmmaking? Did you either expected this is the thing I want, you discovered yes it is, or you found something totally different that you really enjoy?
Frankly, this has actually still been something that I've been interested in all the way since my sophomore year of high school. So yes, I took a little stint in theater, but frankly, that was even to get more experience to be able to communicate and work with actors well. Because that's something that I think a lot of directors don't take the time to learn how to do, and is a big, important step in my mind, kind of like Elia Kazan, as far as being able to really work with actors. As far as coming here and what might have changed, the biggest thing that's changed for me is the difficulty in learning how to write for the stage and what it means to write for the screen, because it's completely different. And you in stage are told that you shouldn't write basically any stage directions whatsoever, and that anything that you want needs to be in the dialogue. So the flip side of that is in film, you need to actually describe everything that the camera is going to see, and that every shot is a sentence, essentially. And to not put as much into the dialogue, but put it into the action as far as what you're seeing.
Yeah. I guess what I meant by that question was, what aspect of filmmaking are you finding most challenging or interesting? Is it the directing? Is it the writing? Have you looked at other technical things? I know a lot of students sort of come into this thinking, I'm going to be a director. And then they're like, oh, wow, producing is actually really what I wanted to do all along. So are you finding some other aspect of filmmaking interesting that you didn't think about before?
I'm finding that I'm actually more of a producer than I realized. And I mean, I guess I've actually been producing most of what I work on for a long time, but I didn't, coming from the background that I didn't realize that so much of that was separated out between the two roles. So that's been interesting. I don't know. I mean, I'm also a little bit older, so coming in now into the grad school program, I did have a better idea of what I wanted to do. So I don't think things as far as what I've come in expecting has changed that much.
Yeah. So let's talk about that other film that you sent us, Red Room.
Right.
This one was interesting. This was sort of like a horror story sort of thing, sort of like a suspense type thing. Was it based on something previous or?
Correct. It's actually based off of an H.G. Wells short story of the same name, The Red Room. And basically, Steve Kroenke and Susan Kelly had suggested that I try and find a short story that would be in public domain that I could go ahead and adapt to the screen. That way it's not something that I'm writing and could focus on the directing and the storytelling aspects in that frame. And the other thing that interested me about it is that so much of it is suspenseful and built up around the candles going out around the room and the anxiety of this character having to deal with that situation. Is there a ghost? Isn't there a ghost? And so I guess I got to play around with what I like about Hitchcock films as far as really just building that suspense and taking a little bit more time to pace that out. In fact, that was one of the things that I ended up having to cut back a little bit more because in the first couple edits, it was actually too long, and I got complaints about that. So
yeah. So that's the other thing I'm interested about. How did you get the candles to blow out right at the moment? Because some of them, how close does somebody have to get to blow out a candle, or what did you have?
We had a couple different things that we tried. We actually had a keyboard cleaner that was working at first. Then we tried actually a fan, and we tried even like a big piece of cardboard, and really ultimately it boiled down to somebody blowing them out, just out of the shot.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, one thing about that I want to ask is, how difficult did you find it to shoot sort of in the low light setting? Because that pretty much all of the film, I would say, is pretty low light, especially once he starts making his way up the stairs. How was that a challenge for you?
Actually, it wasn't.
Okay.
We were fortunate in that we had a 50 millimeter lens with 1.4 f-stop.
Okay.
So we were really able to open it up, and I was able to get the look that I wanted as a result. We also were completely basically using available light. There was one practical that we had on, but aside from that, we really weren't lighting the room with anything as far as Fresnels or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. There's one shot that I wanted to sort of focus on. It's when the candle is burning, and it burns just intensely,
right?
To show the
time lapse. Yeah.
I must say that, I mean, that's the one thing out of the whole thing that I was most impressed with, because usually when you see time lapse, it's kind of, shaky, and it the candle melts, whereas it just felt like this candle was melting in like a very natural way. Did that just happen naturally and you just sort of sped it up, or?
I mean, no, we did an actual time lapse. I mean, it just sped up at all. I mean, literally while we were shooting upstairs in the room itself, I had another camera set up downstairs so that it was an enclosed area where there wasn't any wind or anything like that. And that way, with the time lapse, we would get that effect. So,
okay. So, and how long did that take, the actual full length of it?
I would guess, frankly, we didn't end up paying attention to the exact time, but at least 2 hours. We just let the camera go, and
it lasts.
Yeah.
What, 10 seconds maybe, if that? And I saw that and I thought, did they just superheat that candle? Or because it just comes off as what sort of fast forwarding time lapse looks like. It just looks very cartoony, and this didn't have that feeling.
One of my favorite films is actually George Palace: The Time Machine from 1960,
Right,
where they do a similar effect, and that's like, I love little things like that where you can actually then move along the story with a simple effect.
Sure, and then you just automatically assume that he's been there for a while. So I was really impressed by that. Especially out of everything that I saw, I thought that's something I want to ask about, like, because I'm always interested in the technical.
Well,
side
Mark
of things.
Toddy actually co-directed with me, so I owe a lot to him as far as helping out, making sure that the vision that I wanted was there.
Yeah. So what are you working on now? What's coming up?
Well, the one word that most people say when talking about me is ambitious, and right now my thesis project is a web series that's set in 1927. And
well, we already had a web series that was a full kung fu choreographed thing. So if they can do kung fu, you can do 1927.
But it's actually a vaudeville team that are realizing that the vaudeville circuit is drying up. So they decide to shoot their first film and try and break into film. And while they're shooting their first film, King Lear, might I add, they have a garbage man stumble onto the set, and he inadvertently ruins the film, and they try and edit him out. They can't. So they release it as a comedy, and it ends up being this huge success, and then they have to find the garbage man. And there's the theme is actually dealing with art versus commerce. So some of the other characters are really upset that this garbage man who has no talent is coming in and is going to be upstaging them, essentially.
Wow. That's a great idea. Yeah. That's a really solid story. I'm really interested to see that.
So am I.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to say about film at IU or where you're at?
Just one last little plug with that is that I wouldn't have been able to do this thesis project if it weren't for Susan and actually all of the students that are now involved with it, because I'm actually teaching it as a class with a bunch of undergrads.
Oh, cool.
So I'm getting to work with some of the best students here right now, and it's really coming together because of them. So just want to thank them.
Very cool. All right. Well, I think we'll get out of here. So, Russell, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very excited to see what you come up with next. There's a lot of good work in here. So we will get out of here. I'm Andy.
And I'm Jason.
This has been, and always will be, A Place for Film. A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.